I'm going to introduce today the metal lathe. This is a small bench version lathe, and I sometimes refer to this as a standard modern because that is the manufacturer of this. This is one of the most convenient little machines we have, and there's two of these in the shop, and they're ideal for doing polishing the edges on rings, band rings for jewelry, as well as drilling holes and facing small round or circular items that you may use to build your projects. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the operation, which includes safety of this machine. Now, the first thing you should know about this machine is how to turn the power on to it. Underneath this table here is the main power switch. And when you push that, you'll hear a big thump. Now that means that there's power now to the machine. And there's also a switch right here, which will direct the machine to go either forward or reverse. I'm going to turn it to forward. What that does is it makes the chuck spin. And this is usually the area that we hold our work pieces in. Remember I told you anything round can fit easily into this and be held by this chuck. Now if I turn it reverse, it's going to make the chuck revolve away from me. And that's not necessarily what we want to do for most of our operations in this machine. Now, because you've seen this machine and the moving parts that are associated with it, you need to consider the safety, a safe operation. That is, make sure you have eye protection on, make sure you understand the operation of this machine before you use it. And secondly, make sure your loose clothing, as well as long hair, is tightly wrapped away from the machine. Now this center part of the machine is called the carriage, and there's a couple hand wheels on here, and usually this is a location where we keep our tools. You can take a cut and remove some of the outside material of your piece by installing a proper tool in the tool post. And this tool post can be loosened and turned and swiveled to any angle to complement whatever task you're doing. The carriage moves longitudinally or lengthwise using this hand wheel, and I can move the tool post in and out using the cross feed hand wheel. And you'll notice that there's markings on here which indicate the movement, the amount of movement, and this one is a metric machine, so these markings will indicate fractions of a millimeter. So this moves in and out, and basically what we do is we move our tool into the workpiece that we've held, and then that way it can take a cut. So in and out, side to side, and those are the two major functions. Now to the right of the carriage is the tailstock, and the tailstock can be slid into location, and a variety of different tools, usually drills or tools that are designed to support long pieces, can be placed in here. To install a drill, wind it out so that it's about 1 centimeter sticking out here, and then if I slam it into place, there's a self-holding taper that grabs it and holds it in place. And when I advance this, you'll notice that the drill goes forward. And it usually goes up to about 5 centimeters. Now, if it goes too far, what you need to do is grab that and just wind it back. Now, one of the common things that students do is they'll wind it back too far, and these are designed to release the tool, in this case the drill chuck, in the process. It comes to a stop, and if I pull that back a bit more, now that's free to remove. So if that happens to you, just advance it a little bit and reset the tool. Now, this tailstock can be slid into location, and it'll slide all the way up to the front of the machine. And what I can easily do is when I position it, then I can lock it into place by using that wrench. No matter how hard I pull now, it should stay in its proper location. And when I'm done, quite often when I want to create space between my workpiece, I can just slide it back to the resting position. when I'm ready to put a piece of material inside the lathe, I'm going to grab myself the chuck key, and you'll notice that this will always remain in my hand. One of the safety hazards about a chuck key is when students forget it in the chuck like that. And sometimes I've seen students turn the power on, and this is going to swing down and fly away and either do one of two things: hit the student or damage the machine. So make sure that this is always in your hand. I have with myself here a piece that's about 10 inches long, and it's a 1/2 inch diameter solid round stock. Here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to place it in the lathe chuck, tighten it down, secure it, store the chuck key, and I'm just going to place that down on the bench. And now I'm going to move the carriage over so that my tool bit is in the proper location and ready to take a cut. Now, one consideration about the tool bits, and this one is a brazed carbide one, a very special hard one. I need to locate it so that the tool bit is in the center point of my piece of metal. If it's too high or too low, it won't cut properly. So setting it up to the center is really important, and I can do that by loosening this off and just adjusting the height until it's perfect. There's a little adjusting screw here that allows that. Now, when I'm ready to take a cut, I only want to go halfway to the center of my piece. Don't go beyond the center because it doesn't cut properly, and this type of tool bit especially will break on you. So we want to make sure we understand that concept. Now I'm all ready to go here, and the first thing I'm going to do is rotate it by hand without power so that I can make sure that no part of the machine is going to come into other contacts with another part of the machine and cause damage. Once I'm sure of that, I've got my safety glasses on. I'm going to turn power on to the machine now. Now it's on the forward direction, and I can move my tool over here, and we'll have a little look, and I'll show you what happens. You see the pieces of metal coming off, and I'm just going to the center here. I see that it's left a small little mark here in the middle, and I'm just going to raise the tool bit a little bit because it's too low, and that mark should disappear. And as you can see, the metal is cutting, or the tool bit is cutting the metal. I can remove small little slivers of that. Now the advantage of doing this to a piece is that the ends will now be flat. And if you're going to weld pieces together and maybe perhaps cut this with a hacksaw, now it should be able to stand vertically easily. I can also take some off the outside here, and I can make the diameter smaller. Now these metal chips are very hot, so don't let them touch you. If they touch you, they will burn you. Now, I've reduced the outside of the piece of metal here, and sometimes what I do is I'm just going to grab a file here, and I'm just going to touch the edge just a little bit. So we can easily file on the machine doing that. So I've taken the piece out of the machine, and you can see the end point there is a much smaller diameter than it was when I began. And it didn't take me very long to do that. Never hang a long piece through the machine. We only want to stick out a tiny little bit. The more you stick out, the more dangerous it becomes. So please avoid that. Remember, if you're not certain of the application or how to do a particular